Everyone just hit the accept button or you will be removed from the meeting. And now I'd like to turn it over to Anthony Burek, who'll be presenting using technology to amplify student voice.
All right. Thank you so much, Marjorie. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to day 3 of the CAPE Summit 2022. My name is Anthony Burek. I am the OTAN coordinator for distance learning projects. So happy that you're here today. Hopefully your session, your CAPE Summit is going well, and you are ready for another day, another full day of learning, professional development, and all that. So yes, we're here for my session using technology to amplify student voice. And at the bottom of this slide, sorry, I'll get my teams out of the way. At the bottom of this slide, I do have a link to the resources that I'm going to use during this session. So first of all, I actually want to make sure that everybody can get to the resources. So let me just double check. Marjorie, can we actually let me put the link in the chat here. I got it open.
Yeah, I've actually also uploaded the 2 in there. I'm about to put the link in there too.
Okay.
Got
Actually,
that.
I got that. Okay. So if you click on this link, it should take you to a folder where there are three resources. So one are my slides that I'm going to use during the session, but more importantly, there's a notes document in there. It's another PDF. I'm going to kind of refer to that notes document as we go through the session today. And then there's a third Canva work document, it is a work document. It's also a Word document. But that's for later, so don't worry about that. So I want to make sure, though, that you are able to get a copy of my slides and a copy, more importantly at the moment, a copy of my notes document. So if you're having any trouble with that, can you put that, put a message to Marjorie in the chat, and we can also get you a copy of this via the chat as well. So actually, I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment. So that's what I gotta do. Because I want to show you. Oh, actually, let me do this. I do want to show you. Oh no, where's my Zoom? I do want to make sure that we are able to see these things here. Okay, so my slides, and then also the second thing is this notes document. And just one thing about the notes document that I just want to say right off the bat is that at the very, on pages 1 and 2 of the notes document, I have a couple of graphics. And I'm going to also show you these in the slides in a few minutes. But if you're having trouble seeing them in the slides, you may want to switch over to the notes document, make them larger so that you're able to actually kind of zero in on the content of these graphics, because there's a lot going on in the graphics. So, but we'll kind of walk through it when I get through my slides. And again, the other thing I wanted to point out is after today's session, after our time together this morning, if you go back to my session information on the CAPE Summit site, so at the very bottom is also a link to this folder. So you can also come back, and if you didn't grab the docs or you want to share them with your colleagues or whatever, you can also grab the docs here on the CAPE Summit site as well. Okay, so if there are any questions about that, again, just ask Marjorie in the chat and she can definitely help you out with that. And so without further ado, let me go back to the presentation. So let's move on. So here's our agenda for this morning. So I just want to tell you a little bit about OTAN in case you're not familiar with OTAN. And then we're going to spend some time defining student voice and also reviewing the types of student voice. We're going to talk about some tech tools that you can use to amplify student voice in your classroom, in your program, things like that. And in today's session, I kind of want you to be able to switch your mind between your work as a teacher or an educator, and then also as a student. So kind of how your students in your classroom or in your program or at your school, I want you to kind of put on the student hat for a few minutes and think about kind of what is their experience and how might we do things a little bit differently to invite student voice or more student voice. I'm not sure, we're all probably doing different things in our classrooms, but to invite more student voice, more student participation into their learning, your teaching and their learning. And again, my slides and notes are at the link there. So hopefully everybody has a copy of that. Okay, so just a quick plug for OTAN in case you're not familiar with OTAN. So we are very fortunate in the state of California to have 3 state leadership projects for adult education. Hopefully you are familiar with all 3. So our friends at CalPro, that's one state leadership project. CASAS is a second state leadership project. And then OTAN is the 3rd state leadership project. We focus on technology training, technology application in the classroom, in your programs, at your schools. So definitely reach out to us after the Cape Summit if you have questions about potential training at your site or at your school or in your region or in your consortium. Our contact information is there at the very bottom of the slide. Visit our website, otan.us. We have a lot of resources there. And then also you can give us a call. Marjorie can also put our email, our contact email in the chat as well, support@otan.us. But definitely check out our website, get in touch with us. Happy to meet with and connect with our adult education colleagues in the field on any kind of technology training, technology issues that you have interest in learning more about. Okay, so with that, let's turn our attention to student voice. So I'll just say right off the bat, and maybe some of you know this already, but student voice right now is a hot topic in education. And I kind of first noticed this as at the start of this year when OTAN, my OTAN colleagues and we started going back in person to conferences and sites throughout the summer and all that. And I just, this student voice topic is a hot topic. It's starting to pop up everywhere. I think to me, it seems like one of the silver linings of COVID is that all of a sudden we started paying a lot more attention to student voice when we had to kind of, when we were struggling to connect with students via technology at the very beginning of the pandemic and kind of in a sustained way over the last couple of years. We really all of a sudden have paid a lot more attention to student voice and what are student concerns, what are they thinking about, how would they like to be a part of their learning and all that. So even, if you, after our time together this morning, if you just Google student voice, like you will find a lot of things that are out there, ideas about how to bring student voice into the classroom, how to expand it, how to amplify it, how to get students more involved in their learning and in the life of the school. So this is kind of a good time to look at student voice because a lot of people are thinking about student voice, especially educators. And also, I think, also being able to use technology in this regard as well, right? We've been learning a lot about technology over the last couple of years, maybe more than we would want, but technology really is at the forefront at the moment right now. So this is a good time to think about student voice and using technology to really bring that more about in our classrooms and in our schools. So it's not just me talking about student voice, it's a lot of people talking about student voice. So, okay, so what I'd like to do first is we're gonna start with an entrance ticket. So Marjorie, if you could pop that link in the chat, that would be great. However, when you go there, don't fill out the ticket just yet. I want us to talk about the entrance ticket first, and then we'll do some stuff. So I'm gonna pause from the slides and switch over to the entrance ticket here. So hopefully all of you can get to this entrance ticket. Marjorie popped the link in the chat. And so hopefully you can open that up on your screen. This would be a good time when Marjorie gave us the instructions on how to split your screen. So if you want to put the Zoom on one side and then this ticket on the other side, or a browser open on the other side, that'd be great. Okay, so before we fill out this ticket, don't fill out the ticket just yet. Okay, I want us to think about this for a second, all right? Because in our classrooms and in our programs, we do a lot of we ask students like a lot of questions, right? We have them fill out surveys, we have them fill out questionnaires, we have them fill out Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, we have them do polls, all these kinds of things. But the first question I want to ask you is kind of about the management of this, of these polls and surveys and such, right? So well, okay, maybe I'll just tell you. So I've been thinking about like, okay, student voice, right? So we put a survey or a poll or a questionnaire in front of the students, right? And we ask them for their information, right? Or their ideas or questions or whatever. And that's great, right? But here's one thing about these things, right? At the moment, this poll, or sorry, this entrance ticket is 100% teacher created, right? The students have had no input into the creation of this poll, questionnaire, survey, entrance ticket, whatever you want to call it, right? So I want you to kind of put on your student hat for a second here. And so I've come up with 3 questions here, right? First, I just want to know, like, what is your role, in adult education? The second question is, what comes to mind when you hear the term student voice? And the third question is, what is one thing you hope to gain from today's session, right? So I ask you these questions because I really would like to know this information. I'm not sure how much value it has for you as a student, right? All of the value of this seems to be for the teacher, right? So I'd like to know if you were, we're all in the virtual room together here. Is there anything that you would like to know about the other participants in this session? Like if you could ask the other participants in this session a question, what would that question be? And you can type it in the chat. If you want to come on mic also, because I want to hear your voices, if you want to come on mic, you're also welcome to do that. Marjorie will help you with that if you have any questions. But I'm trying to find out, like, what is a question that you would want to ask the other people in this room about student voice? And I'll pause for a second here. Okay, so Gino, thank you. About what things in life are you passionate? Okay, good. Anybody else? A question that you'd like to ask the other folks in the room? About student voice, about something else? If you want to come on mic, please do.
Yeah, I have a question.
Hey, Audrey.
Hi, Anthony. So I know a lot of times, especially for the population we serve down here in the South Bay, the southernmost part of California, students are shy. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to tell their opinion. They'll leave the class without, letting us know why. And then when we get back to them, they're like, oh, I didn't want to say anything, but I didn't like my teacher, or, the feedback part. So how do you foster an environment where students feel like they can actually tell you what they're thinking or feeling or why they need to leave? I think that's the biggest thing for us.
Okay. Thank you so much, Audrey. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, thank you, Gino and Maggie and Karima also for your questions in the chat. Okay, so thank you so much for that, Audrey and others. So what I'd like to do is, through the power of technology, I've created this entrance ticket, right? Again, 100% teacher created. Really, the value is only for the teacher at the moment, right? This is for my benefit. So what I would like to do is, again, and we already have a few early birds who have filled it out. That's great. But one thing that I can do on the fly through the power of technology is actually incorporate that student voice into this activity, right? So I can go ahead and add a new question. I'm going to make it a text question. I'm just going to borrow Audrey's question. So Audrey's question was, let's correctly spell. How do you foster? Oh, now, Audrey, I don't remember your question. How do you foster a sense of community? I'll do a paraphrase of you. How do you foster a sense of community in your classroom?
So students feel free to voice their opinion.
Thank you. So students feel free to voice their opinions. Great. Okay. I'll make it a long answer. Okay. So now if we go back, so this is saved. So now if we go back to the preview, we should see Audrey's question there at the bottom. Okay, so more importantly, right? So what am I trying to do here, right? What I'm trying to like encourage student voice in the management of our classroom, right? In the administration of our activities, right? Because we all know as teachers, like we're doing all of the heavy lifting, right? To create the activities, you know, for the student learning, right? But how do we bring that student voice into their learning, right? So they feel invested in the process, right? So I just wanted to give you, I know as teachers, right, sometimes we just get automatic about these things, right? Oh, I'm doing my lesson plan. Like I got to make a survey, I got to make a activity, I got to make a this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, that's your responsibility as a teacher. I'm not saying don't do it, right? But what I am saying is that I'm asking you is like, are there opportunities for the students to plug into the process of their own learning, right? How do we hear from them about the things that they care about? And how do we weave that into the activities that we have going on in the classroom? So this is just one idea of mine. I wanted to share it with you. Again, we want students to be a part of the process of their own learning, okay? So why don't you go ahead and fill this out now? So you have my questions, plus we have Audrey's question in there as well. And we'll take a look and see what you've come up with for your answers. One thing I will point out as you are filling this out is that this is a Microsoft form. I know a lot of folks use Google Forms. This is the Microsoft equivalent of the Google form. But one thing I want to point out is you see this little icon here. It's the open, looks like an open book with a speaker in front of it. So this is a tool called Immersive Reader. It's in all of the Microsoft products. And if you open it up, I'll just demonstrate for you. So what the Immersive Reader does is it will read back the text that it sees on the screen, right? Oops. So let me see if this will work. I don't think I've.
Anthony, you might not be sharing computer sound.
Okay, yeah, that's what I realized. So here's what I heard. So when I hit the play button, I hear a reader who actually is reading the words or reading the text word by word. So you might consider this for your ESL students or maybe your beginning ABE students who would benefit from hearing the words in addition to reading the words, okay? And this immersive reader, you'll notice that in this case, in the form, it shows up in the different sections of the form. So it will read the heading, for example, it will read the first question, and then it'll read all the answers. It'll read the second question and then prompt you to enter your answer. It'll read the third question, same. It'll read the fourth question, same. So again, I want to just let you know about the Immersive Reader. And if you are using Microsoft products, you might already know about it. But if you're not using them, you might consider, if you have the ability to do it, but you might consider using Microsoft products where you can use the Immersive Reader as a part of those products and such. Okay, so let me go back. Any questions? Oh, let me see. Karima has a question here. What areas? Are Microsoft Forms available for free? Okay, good question. So Karima, my understanding with Microsoft is that they are trying to kind of move some of their products or make some of their products more freely available. So I believe that you can search for like free Microsoft Office or something like that. And then you can see basically you would create an account and then you would have access to Word, PowerPoint, Forms, things like that. You probably would get kind of a stripped down version of them. But you could definitely take a look into that. And if you create your free Microsoft Office account and then start exploring some of those products. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So across the country, right, school districts are the battlegrounds for Google versus Microsoft. So yes, that's where we find ourselves at the moment. Okay, so let's take a look and see what's been coming in so far. So we have, Microsoft Forms are dynamic like Google Forms as well. So as the responses come in, we'll see the form responses updated in real time. Okay, so what's your role at your agency? So we have some teachers, welcome. We have some administrators, welcome. We have some others. Always interested to know who the other folks are. But welcome to the session. Okay, what comes to mind when you hear student voice? Let's just see what folks have come up with here. Student is aware that their importance is aware of their importance and has the capability to communicate their needs with confidence. Good. Student empowerment, letting opinions be heard, student ownership of their learning, student human-centered design, universal design. Good. Student feedback, student opinions. Do they have any recommendations for better learning? Yeah, they probably do. We just need to ask them. So that's kind of my flip answer, but I would say, yeah, I think especially our adult students, I think our adult students have a lot of ideas about their learning and what works best for them. Again, we just need to ask them. So to me, that's the starting point. Student is at the center of the discussion, ongoing dialogue, good between students, teachers, admin. Don't forget support staff. Support staff are, as you know, our support staff probably have a lot of contact with our students. They're also good folks to ask about as well. Okay, so good. We have some initial ideas about what about student voice. What's one thing you hope to learn from today? Insight into how technology can be used, good, how to maximize use of technology, good, how to engage students, strategies, tools, methods, ideas, get them more involved in their learning. In Zoom, students are more quiet. What are some strategies to increase interactivity? Good, one idea of a tool. Okay, good. So I think we're all at the right place here. And then Audrey's question, how do you foster a sense of community in your classroom? Good question, Audrey. Thank you so much for asking it. Suggestion box, idea box. Good. I do it by allowing myself to be vulnerable. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, whoever said that. Treating students with empathy and compassion, building trust. Yes. By the way, if you listened to Ken Shelton's talk yesterday, which was totally amazing, he did mention he made reference to social emotional learning. We don't see a lot of it in adult ed. I hope that all of you back at your agencies are exploring social emotional learning, and not just for the benefit of our students, but also for the benefit of ourselves as well. We all need more social emotional learning. Stop class and listen to them when opinions come up. Great. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so good. I think we're in the right place here. So I'm going to go back to our slides here. But again, I just want you to think about, and I guess one of the things I also want to invite you to think about after today, after our session this morning, is that, right, we're teachers, we're kind of, we have things that we sort of do automatically in our classrooms, right? So for example, like handing out a survey seems to be a pretty automatic activity that happens in our classrooms and our schools. And I think Ken Shelton also talked about this yesterday in the plenary, where he was really inviting us to think about kind of like redesigning our work, especially post-COVID. Like, what are the things that we've learned about in the last few years about education, and kind of things that we didn't think were possible are now all of a sudden possible, right? We, with a little bit of encouragement and nudging and a pandemic, took a pandemic to realize some of these things. And so he really, I think, was inviting us to think about how do we sort of redo our work as educators. And so, it starts with these little changes that we make to our process in the classroom with our students. So, okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So I want to give you a chance just to read this definition. I'll be quiet here. Okay, let me read it for you in case you are having trouble seeing the screen. It says, in education, student voice refers to the values, opinions, beliefs, perspectives, and cultural backgrounds of individual students and groups of students in a school. And 2, instructional approaches and techniques that are based on student choices, interests, passions, and ambitions. And this definition comes to us from the Glossary of Education Reform. So my question to you is, when you read this definition, what stands out to you in this definition and why? So if you want to put your ideas in the chat, that would be great. I also would invite anyone who would like to come on mic and share their thoughts with the group. We have a pretty small group here. If you're feeling a little vulnerable this morning, please go ahead and come on mic and share your thoughts about this definition. So would anyone like to share their thoughts? What stands out to you in this definition and why?
To me, it's passions, values, and ambitions. The course that I teach is about those 3 things for each student. So over the course of the semester, I get to learn what each student's passion, values, and ambitions are.
Super. Thank you so much, Gino. Appreciate that. Anyone else like to come on mic or share your thoughts in the chat? Audrey in the chat, thank you so much. Student choices. Sometimes as teachers, we have our own agenda or our own curriculum and students don't have a choice. Thank you, Audrey. Anyone else want to share, come on mic or share in the chat what stands out to you in this definition? James, thanks. I appreciate that it includes groups as well as individuals, right? Yeah, exactly. We can go back and forth between individual voice, group voice, shared voices, things like that. Good, Meredith, student choices, interests, passions, ambitions, also cultural backgrounds. Good, 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 good. Okay, thank you so much. You know, I'll just say the thing that stands out for me actually is right in the middle of this definition, the instructional approaches and techniques. So as a teacher, as an educator, I kind of zeroed in on this part of the definition because again, it gives me that opportunity to kind of reflect on my own practice and think about, does my instruction does my instruction invite student voice in? Do I have techniques or ideas or activities that invite student voice in, or is it just me standing up in the front of the room doing a lot of the talking, right? And a lot of the directing. So that's the part that stands out for me, but I also appreciate everyone else's ideas about the other things that stand out for this definition. Okay, so let's move to the next slide here. So again, I mentioned we're going to look at these 2 graphics. It's also on your notes document. So if you're having trouble on the screen, if you're like on a small screen or whatever, you can also open up that notes document and make these graphics a lot, hopefully a lot bigger, so you can see them more clearly. So I want to share these kind of 2 connected graphics with you to give us give us a context and a frame for student voice. So the first graphic that we're looking at here is the title is Types of Student Voice. And in the middle, actually, I'm going to try to annotate. I don't always annotate, but I'm going to try it. Let me use my mouse. Okay, so in the middle, oops, I did not do that correctly. Hold on a sec. Sorry. Okay. So in the middle of this, you should see these 6 types of student voice. Sorry, my drawing is terrible here. My sister's got all the artistic genes in the family. So from left to right, we have 6 types. We have expression, consultation, participation, partnership, activism, and leadership. Okay, 6 types of student voice. This is a spectrum. And so kind of the measure across the top of this spectrum, the title is Collaboration with Adults. And on the left side of the spectrum, we have this term being heard, right? So are we hearing the student voices, right? Versus on the right side of the spectrum, we have this term leadership, right? And so basically when we move sort of from the left to the right of the spectrum, we're talking about kind of giving students more opportunities to become leaders and to sort of raise their voices as leaders, right? Not just students, but leaders in the classroom and the schools and their communities, things like that. And this also has to do with collaborating with adults. So it's not just students on their own, but it's actually, somebody was talking about earlier, James, I think was saying, like, in the definition, we also want to talk about groups as well, right? So how do we, in group work, in group activities, like also how do we get that student voice to come out in group work, in group activity? Okay, so let's move to the, oops, let me close the annotation. Let me move to the next slide here. So the title of this is Student Voice Oriented Activity. So let me annotate again. So in the middle of this graphic, we see those same 6 types of student voice. So again, from left to right: expression, consultation, participation, partnership, activism, and leadership. Okay. So what we just saw on the previous slide. We have 2 kind of new bars across the top. So the first one is students involved as stakeholders. And on the left side of the spectrum, the term students articulating their perspectives, right? Basically saying their perspectives, versus on the right-hand side of the graphic, students directing collective activities, right? So the students are basically in charge. They are the leaders of the collective activities. The second bar is students as collaborators. And so on the left side of the spectrum, the term is students as data sources. Oh my God, that sounds so cold. But basically, right, they have data and they are giving us the data. They're giving us the information, right? For example, like via a survey or a form or whatever. Versus on the right side of this bar, students as leaders of change. So again, referring to students in that leadership role. And they are the change makers. They are leading the change, okay? I would also point out to you kind of what's at the bottom of this graphic. So on the left-hand side, this left-hand corner, this bar that says, or sorry, this box that says, most student voice activity in schools or classrooms reside on the left end of the spectrum, right? So we're encouraging student voice, like we're getting the voice, right? But that's kind of where it stops in most cases, right? So I also want to direct you to what's on the bottom right part of this graphic. So it reads, the need for adults to share authority, demonstrate trust, protect against co-optation, learn from students, and handle disagreement increases from the left to the right, okay? And then students' influence, responsibility, and decision-making roles increase from left to right, okay? So again, when we look at these student types, types of student voice, they're very different, right? Different things are happening depending on whether we're just sort of soliciting student voice or inviting student voice versus students becoming more invested in what's going on, either in the classroom, in your programs, in your schools, in your communities, things like that. And so I would say for all of us, the challenge is really to think about how do we really start moving students along the spectrum from the left end, where we're spending a lot of time in what we're doing, into some of those activities that are more to the right or on the right end of this spectrum, okay? Audrey, I saw you had your hand raised. Did you want to say something? You want to chime in for a sec?
No, I was a little confused at first, but I get it now, where most of the activities happen on the brown side and we are trying to get to the purple side as we think about this. I understand now. Thank you.
Great. All right. And thank you for that. Thank you for that clear summation. I appreciate that as well. Okay. So great. Thank you, Marjorie. Okay. So let me close the annotation. Let's go to the next slide here. So here's what I'd like you to do. So as you know, you've had a chance to take a look at these 2 graphics, the types of student voice and then the spectrum that we just saw. So I want you to think about, just sort of keep in your mind for a second, what are some questions that you have about these 2 graphics? what thoughts, what ideas, what information would you like to get from your colleagues? Okay, so let me give you a minute just to kind of look at those graphics again, kind of dig into them for a second there, and then just maybe think of a question or two that you have about, you wonder about when you look at those graphics. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide here. Actually, maybe I'll show this slide for a second. So I want to talk about Padlet and using Padlet. And hopefully by now, a lot of you are familiar with Padlet. You maybe started using it in your classroom, or you've been using it throughout the pandemic. So Padlet is basically, it's an online bulletin board that encourages sharing and collaboration. That's kind of the down and dirty definition of what Padlet is. Okay, so just imagine, you know, in your classroom, if you had sort of a big black whiteboard or blackboard or bulletin board or whatever, and you could post things up on the bulletin board. So Padlet is sort of a digital version of that. So we're going to do an activity. And Marjorie, maybe you can, oops, sorry, Marjorie, can you pop, oops, sorry. Can you pop this link in the chat for me? So it's padlet.com/OTANTrainsU and then /CAPE. Thank you. Okay, so Marjorie put the link to our Padlet in the chat here. So now let's do it. Oops, sorry. My tech skills this morning are not very good. Okay, so let's switch over to the Padlet for a second. So hopefully everybody is getting here. It's kind of a red screen, title at the top, Cape Summit Student Voice. Anybody having any trouble getting here? We're all good. Okay, so here's the thing about Padlet, and I want to kind of harken back to the first activity that we did with the entrance ticket, right? So very often as the teacher, when we create these Padlets or when we set up these other kind of digital activities, right? Again, we do all of the work to get it all ready for the students to then do whatever it is that we would like them to do. So I would like to make a suggestion here that we let the students drive the activity in this case, right? So I can come up with I also looked at the two graphics myself, and I have like all kinds of questions about them, right? But I'd like for you as the teacher, as the educator, to take a pause, right, on your questions and invite the students to ask their questions, right? And not just to sort of like throw out their questions out into the air where they just sort of hang right in the classroom, but actually creating questions that other students can respond to as well. So you're sort of like stepping back from your role, right? We've all heard the term sage on the stage, guide on the side, right? So I'm asking you to step out of that sage role and into the guide role. And here's one way that we can do it. So in the Padlet, if you have a question that you want to ask about the graphics that you saw, you should be able to click one of these plus bars here. And then, so what happened is I clicked the plus bar, it opened up this little sidebar here. And then in the subject space, I can put my question, okay? So you can type your question, ... question, ... or you could actually maybe put a title for it here, and then you could put your question down here. Either way, however you want to do it is fine. And then when you're finished, go ahead and publish it, and then it will show up on the Padlet. Okay. So let's try that. Discard that. And then I see, there we go. So Audrey, thank you. So Audrey put her question onto the Padlet. Now, also as a student, you are able to, you can like it. If you like her question, you could give it a little heart. You can also add a comment to Audrey's question. maybe with another question or with an idea or whatever. But basically, I'm going to turn this activity over to you, and I'm going to let the students drive this activity. So go ahead, you can either put a question, put a comment. I'll give you a minute to work on that. And if you have questions about the Padlet, or if you're having trouble with the Padlet, just put it in the chat and Marjorie and I can help you with that. Good question. Okay, good. 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 So we have a couple of questions. Oh, good. We have a couple of questions so far. Good. How do you foster student leadership in your classroom? In case of online classes, daunting to develop relationships. Good. How should I treat students who don't want to move to the right? Okay. How can you help student leaders to empower others to express their voice? Audrey, yes?
Yeah, just a clarification. So
Yeah.
in order for, like, I see my name shows up, but the others say anonymous. Do you have to sign in to Padlet first before your name comes up?
No, so when you do your Padlet settings, you can control the settings on making posts and comments and such anonymous or not. So
Okay.
this is a good tool in this regard. So Audrey, it might be, yeah, I don't remember exactly why you're showing up, but other folks are not. It might, I don't know if you're signed in to Padlet, or I'm not quite sure about that, but
Yeah, we're using Padlet for WASC right now. So
okay.
for all the ideas and everything. And
All right, you
so
might
I'm
not.
always signed in, but
Okay, that's
I know
probably
that
it.
some of the teachers have never used Padlet before. So when I had them go in, they would come up as anonymous. And then I was like, okay, well, you'll need to sign in if you want to put your name on it. But
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. So that's why I was wanted to clarify with you, because that's what I found with the teachers that I was working with.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good kind of measure of any kind of tech tools that you use. So sometimes I prefer a tool like Padlet, for example, because it does allow for anonymous posting. And I think some folks have already said, like, yeah, our students are shy to, they don't always, they're adults, especially. I think they tend to be kind of more self-conscious of their voice, right? If they're not always raising their voice in class, right? Or they say something and they're not quite sure how it's going to go over. I mean, you know all the the things that go through our heads, right? So right, but I like a tool like Padlet that does allow for the anonymous input, and you can also invite folks to show their names as well. Okay, good. So here's the thing that I like about this activity is that I didn't have to do, as the teacher, like I didn't have to do any of the heavy lifting. Like I'm not sitting up at night like thinking of like the most amazing questions that I want to ask my students, right? I'm giving the students the opportunity to drive the activity. And then as the teacher, I can also weigh in as the guide, as the facilitator, right? I don't have to be the director here, right? The students can be the directors of this activity. And as you can see, like the students in this case have like all kinds of questions, right? Who cares what my questions are? Like, I want to hear what the students' questions are, right? I want to be able to invite them in to feel like they're invested in what we're doing in the classroom. So again, for many of us, we get sort of automatic with these tools, like, oh yeah, I'm going to set up a Padlet and we're going to use it in the class, blah, blah, blah. And that's great. I mean, do that. And also think about using or think about redesigning your activity to put the students in charge of the activity rather than you in charge of the activity. Okay. All right. Great. I think we're doing okay. So let's move on to another tool, another idea. Actually, what I want us to do is, we don't have to, unless people want to, say this or whatever, but the activity that we just did with the Padlet, I think as educators, we want to be reflective on our practice, right? So just a couple of questions I want you to think about, right? Number one, do we hear the student voice in this activity? Yes or no? And how do we hear it? Two, does technology make this activity better, and how, right? So we always at OTAN, we always say, good teaching first, technology second. I mean, we love our technology at OTAN, as you all know, and technology is not the primary, right? Good teaching, good instruction is the primary. Technology is the second, and technology can make the instruction better, right? Not always, unfortunately, as I'm sure many of us have learned, but we're trying to figure out, like, how do we use the technology to make the instruction and teaching better? Okay, so I just want you to think about, with the pad that we just did, these questions. Okay. Gino, thank you so much. Tech is a tool, not an end in itself. Yes, we agree at OTAN as well, although we love our technology. Okay, next activity. All right, polling and surveying tech tools, right? As you know, there are many polling and surveying tools. You probably have used Google Forms. We just did a Microsoft form at the beginning. There's other tools like Poll Everywhere, Direct Poll, SurveyMonkey, some of you have used before. So again, this is a way that we can invite student voice in. We're just going to practice with a tool called Poll Everywhere, if you're not familiar with it. So as the teacher or the educator, you're going to create your account at polleverywhere.com. When you have the students do the activities, they're actually going to use a different URL, a different address. But as the teacher, you can set up your Poll Everywhere account. You can get a free account. So there's that. And in this activity, we're going to do 3 different questions. We're going to do a word cloud. If you're not sure what that is, you'll see that in a second. We're going to do an open-ended question, and then we're going to do something called an upvote. So I want you to think about, as the teacher, again, when you're getting the results back from the students, when you're inviting in their voice, how do you sort of facilitate these activities to maximize the student voice? All right. So here's what we're going to do. As the students, you're going to go to this address here, pollev. This is the student side, so pollev.com, and you're going to enter this code, OTAN trains you 534, right? Or you're going to text OTAN trains you 534 to the number 37607. So you can actually, if you're on your phone, you can actually just text your responses if you want to try that out. If you're on a device, you can go to pollev.com and enter that code right there. So what I'm going to do is, let me go to the activity. And I'm going to switch over to the activity. You'll also get the connection information on my slide as well. Okay, so I'm going to activate this. And let's go to present mode. And so at the very top of your screen, and Marjorie's put the connection in the chat. Thank you so much. So at the very top of your screen, if you haven't connected to the Poll Everywhere activity yet, it's right here at the top, pollev.com/ and then the code to join is OTAN trains you 534. You can also just text OTAN trains you 534 to 37607 once you join, and then you can go ahead and text your message. Okay, so the first activity that we're going to do here is a word cloud. And you should see on your devices this question, one word. attending an online conference is. What's the one word that comes to mind when you think of this activity? Attending an online conference is. So if you're not familiar with a word cloud, so as the answers come in, as the responses come in, they generate this visual thing called a word cloud here. And if a number of students enter the same term or the same word, then those words actually will increase in size. And they will get a little bit more prominence than the other words that appear in the word cloud. You'll see it's a dynamic activity as well. One thing, just back to that question of the anonymity. So one of the reasons, again, why I like Poll Everywhere is that it does allow for anonymous responses. So again, we know our students, right? They're not always willing to put a name to an answer. But this might be, this might be an activity that you do in the class to encourage the voice, but not put anybody on the spot necessarily. Okay, so again, think of yourself as the teacher. You're doing this activity. How do you what's your next move, right? When you do this activity in the class, okay? So it seems like a lot of people feel like attending an online conference is convenient, all right? But we have some other ideas as well. So now we have a kind of two groups that say, sort of the majority groups, right? One group says it's convenient, another says it's fun. So again, as a teacher, like what are we doing with this information, right? Fun, exciting, convenient, good. Okay, and we're building the word cloud here. Okay, so that's a word cloud activity. Let's move on to the next activity here. Okay, so the next question or the next prompt is the Cape Summit theme is the power is yours. Okay, so I'd like to think, how would you, in your case, what do you feel like you have the power to now do as you're learning, as you're attending sessions, as you're listening to speakers, as you're participating in activities? What do you feel like you now sort of have the power to do that maybe you didn't have before? Or maybe you have the power now to do something that you feel stronger in that ability. Okay. So this activity is a little bit different. Some people call it like a waterfall. So as the responses are coming in, you're going to sort of see them cascading down the screen here. So far we have a couple of ideas. The power is yours to grow and learn and then change. The power is yours to try new things. Great, super. If anything that we've learned in the last few years is that we've been trying all kinds of new things that we didn't know that we were able to do. The power is yours to share and model my takeaways. Great. Shape the future. Great. One thing too, just so you know, is you don't lose, even though it's a kind of like a waterfall or cascade, you do have a scroll bar here on the right-hand side, so you can go back and forth between the answers. So if you give everybody a chance to kind of chime in, and then if you want to go back and then go back to the very first answer, you can go ahead and scroll down to get to the first answer. Maggie, you have a question.
Yeah, hi. Is it in the settings? So you go into this pollev.com and you set up your, these polls, and then is it within the settings where you decide if you're going to show the responses in a word cloud or a waterfall? It's like all within pollev?
Yeah, exactly. So, and just remember, the Poll EV is for the students. As the teacher, you go to the polleverywhere.com. But yes, you have a lot of question choices in Poll Everywhere. So that's actually something that I like about Poll Everywhere, is you can set up the word cloud. You can do straight multiple choice. You can do word clouds. You can do these kind of waterfalls. We're going to do another activity in just a second, an upvote. You can also add like a graphic as a question. So imagine like adding like a map, and then you can have people tag like parts of the map, which is nice. So like, or if you're doing, I always think like if you're doing like a science lesson, like a part of the body, for example, like the human heart, and you want people to, you want the students to identify like the parts of the human heart, you can have them, put up a picture of a heart, and then they can tag like the various pieces of the heart or whatever. So there are a lot of possibilities, but Poll Everywhere gives you a lot of different question choices.
Thank you so much. Great.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so again, as the teacher, think about as these answers are coming in from the students, like how are you going to facilitate the discussion about what the students have added, for their answers. All right, let's do one more question. This is kind of a loaded question, but we definitely during the summit have been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, Ken Shelton in his plenary yesterday talked a lot about this as well. What are some of your ideas? How can adult education become more diverse, equitable, and inclusive? So this is an upvote activity. So you both can add your ideas, your answers during the activity. But then as the answers start coming in, you can also upvote other student responses, right? So we'll see that happen in a second as people are putting down some answers. We'll give you a minute to chime in here. Okay, so we have a first response here, a couple, listen to our communities, more opportunities for cultural exchange, staff take surveys, at Project Implicit, and train. Good. Okay. So you also should have the ability to, if you like any of these responses, you can give it a thumbs up. There we go. So there we go. So people, great. So people are starting to also, so you both have the opportunity to answer, but then you also have the opportunity to weigh in on other answers that you see coming from your friends in the room. Okay. And then the ones that get the more more votes will, rise up to the top. And again, it's sort of a dynamic activity that we're doing here. So at the moment, the one that's getting the most votes is by giving ourselves and each other permission to try new things, make mistakes, and that then we commit to learn from. Great. Somebody was listening to Ken yesterday. I think Ken Shelton definitely pointed this out, right? He gave us that beautiful poem in the beginning about brave space and kept circling back to that, right? Audrey, yes, please.
I noticed that once I put in my response, I can submit another one. Is that something that you can control as the teacher, whether they're able to submit more than one response, or is that a default that on any of these questions, we could have submitted 2 or 3 answers?
No, I do believe that that's a setting that you can limit it to just one response per student. So I would have to go back in the settings and look at it again, but I believe you can just set it for the one response.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so again, this is an example of an upvote activity. And so again, think of yourself, as, and you do have the scroll bar so we can see more of our students' answers as well. But again, as the teacher, how do you sort of facilitate discussion, from the student responses that are coming in, right? Why do people, for example, maybe you ask the room, like, why do folks feel like this is a really, this one sort of rises to the top, right? What about some of the others, or, things like that. So think about, as the teacher, how do you facilitate that discussion? And, with some of these more weighty questions, right? We were talking about earlier about vulnerability and empathy and community and things like that. So, some of these questions are hard questions to facilitate in the class, or even raise the topic in some classes, in some cases, right? So that's where, we'll just kind of put in a plug again for that social emotional learning training. That might be something, with a little bit of training for teachers and students, that might give folks the opportunity to feel like it is a safe space, that where students can share their voices in those classrooms. And I know Audrey, way back in the beginning on our entrance ticket, that was kind of her question, like, how do we foster that community so that people feel like they can even say their piece in our classrooms, right? Versus feeling shy or reserved or not encouraged to share their voices in the classroom. So, okay, so thank you so much. So this was Poll Everywhere. And, like I said, there are a lot of kind of polling tools that are out there. Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, but I do like Poll Everywhere for the variety of question types that you can include. So again, let's just think about for a second here. Let's reflect on the activity, right? So number one, do we hear the student voice? Yes or no, and how? And two, does technology make this a better activity or make this activity better, and how, right? So, if we don't feel like using technology in this case was a good use of the resource, then maybe we have to kind of rethink this activity. Okay. Questions. And Gino in the chat gave us a good suggestion here. Especially effective for more introverted students is to change a why question. Okay, so why do more people like this statement to a what question? What might make this a good statement? Good. Okay, thanks, Gino. Good suggestion, right? Think about how question as teachers, as educators, like we always want to ask the right question. Right. So this is a good suggestion from Gino, kind of reorient our question creation here, right? Move it from a why question to a what question. Okay. And then Sue, thanks so much. Seeing the responses is validating to the one who submits. Right. That's a good point, Sue, right? So it's one thing to sort of like say it, right? It's another thing to sort of like write it and have it sort of up there for everybody to see, especially if you haven't had the chance to say it. You still feel like you're participating in the activity because it's right there for everybody to see. So great insight. Thank you so much, Sue. And Meredith, the medium is the message. Different ways of participating appeal to different students. Right, exactly. Yes, yeah. Right, we're always looking for different ways to get to the activity, different avenues, different pathways for the students to get to the same place. So having these different modes and means and modes of getting there it's very important, right? There's not one way to do it. Okay, let's move on to the next activity. So we're at 11. Yeah, I wish we had like more time, but we don't. Okay, so let's practice with another tool called Flip. So some of you may know this tool. It actually used to be called Flipgrid. And then they made a change over the summer. They changed it from Flipgrid to Flip. But it basically is a video creation tool. And hopefully we have I'd like for us to kind of try this out. So there are a couple ways that you can get to use Flip. So you can either download the Flip app to your phone, to your tablet, whatever, or you can just go to the website, the web address info.flip.com. Just go ahead and type that into your favorite browser. And then I have a join code. So the join code is CAPE22. CAPE22. And you're going to make a 1-minute recording and then respond to a colleague's recording. So let me move over to Flip. So again, if you're at info.flip.com, let me just pop that in the chat for those of you. Oh, thank you, Marjorie. Marjorie did it as well. Okay, so if you go to info.flip.com, or if you have the Flip app already on your phone, So you may notice that up here in the upper right in my browser, it says got a join code. Click this icon to enter. So where you see the two people or the two tops of the human body, so two people, I guess. Go ahead and click on that, and you can enter the join code. The join code is CAPE, C-A-E-P 22, and then go ahead and enter that. Now, if you don't have a CAPE, if you don't have a Flip account yet, it's going to prompt you to basically join. You can join with a Google account. You can join with a Microsoft account. You can also join with an Apple account. I think the Flip is a really cool tool. I think there's potentially like a lot of different uses for Flip. So I would encourage you to join. If you don't want to do it today, that's fine. But hopefully some of you will do it. And so we can try it out as a group here. So I'm going to join with I might already be signed in. Let me see. I don't think well, let me try my screen like that. There we go. Okay, so I'll kind of walk you through what we're looking here. I'm actually, since I'm the administrator here, you probably will have a slightly different view of this versus you as the user, but you should see this kind of graphic here, CAPE 22 student voice, and then click on the student voice activity. So I've set up this activity, this video creation activity with a couple of questions for you. So in your video, you're going to make a video, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So in your video, just share two things. What is your name? And question 2, what is a way you use video in your instruction or in your program or at your school? And what you can do is you can add you should see an add response button. You want to make sure that you allow use of your camera and microphone in order to make the video. Oh, I'm in the Zoom. Okay, wait. I'm not sure that Marjorie? Are you still with us, Marjorie?
Yes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
I know
because
Zoom
I'm sure.
takes over,
Yeah,
so.
I'm sharing my Zoom screen. I wonder. Yeah, I'm not sure that I
You
can.
could try turning off your Zoom camera and then retry camera here again. See
Okay.
if that works.
Let me see if that works or not. You're so
Woohoo!
smart, Marjorie.
Woohoo!
Jeez Louise. Okay, so you have kind of this work screen here. So if you just want to make a straight video, like no frills or anything, you have kind of this circle, this button here in the middle. You click on the button, it gives you a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then you can go ahead and make your video, say your piece, name, how you use video in your classroom, program, school, whatever. Over on the left-hand side here, I have kind of a menu of things that I can also add to make my video fun and exciting. So you have a couple of options there. You might want to add a GIF, for example, or maybe a photo. Also here on the screen, in my case, to the right of the button, I have this backdrop button. So if I click on the backdrop button, say that quick 5 times, I should get some different background choices. It's very slow at the moment. Let's see if I can add Spookyville, if that works or not. Oh, okay. So here's me in front of a haunted house, right? You can have some fun with it, add a backdrop. You can also add a few other features here. And then I will go ahead and make my video quick, like 3, 2, 1. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony, and I like to use video in my trainings to encourage adult educators to also use video in their classrooms with their students and their programs. It's a way to encourage people to share their voice on different questions that you ask. Okay, then I hit the pause or the stop button again, and then when I'm done, I can go to next. You can do some editing. Oops. You can do some editing there, ... and then go to next. Go ahead and add some information. You can put your name if you want. Anthony Burek. Caption, here is my video. Enjoy. If you want to put a link to something, like maybe you talked about your website or your school site or your class website with your resources for students, you could put a link in there, and then go ahead and post. So it's going to give you, it's going to take a little time to upload the video and get it all ready. Oh, fantastic. Your video is posted to the topic. Okay, so then we can go back to the topic. So now I see, this is an old video that I did, but then here's my new video right now. And then on any of the videos that are added to the topic, you can go ahead and watch it, and then you can like it. What else can you do? Oh, don't report it. You can like it. You can also add a comment, so you can respond to the video that you just saw. You can type a response. So you can type a response here, or you also could record a video response to the video that you just watched, right? So it might be a nice way to kind of have sort of a video chat, as it were, a little bit asynchronous, but it might be a nice way for people to kind of put a face to a voice, and encourage more engagement and interaction that way. Okay, so any questions about Flip at the moment? Let's see. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see any other responses at the moment, but maybe people are working on it. But Nancy, yes, you're welcome. Yeah, I think Flip is a really so actually thank you for your loving it, because I did want to say something just about these tools in general. So, you know, surveys, quizzes, the forms that we did, the Padlet, the Flip that we just saw here, the Poll Everywhere, for example. I think one thing kind of in the evolution of these tools as well is that it's not just the teachers who are doing the creation, but we really need to encourage more student creation, right? So what about, for example, maybe the students, maybe you're doing a unit in your classroom, whatever the topic might be, right? So what about the students creating the prompts and not the teacher creating the prompts, right? So, you know, we always say as teachers and in education, you know, one of the ways that you sort of become proficient in the content is by becoming the teacher, right? When you feel capable of actually teaching what you've learned to others, that's going to make you more proficient with the content. It's going to make you kind of a, you know, it's going to get you more connected to the content, right? And we always talk about that in the context of teachers, right? But what about in the context of the students, right? So for example, what if the student came up with the prompt and kicked off the Flip activity and invited the other students in the class to, you know, be a part of the activity in that way? So, you know, as a human being, like I'm a teacher, right? But I'm also a human being. Like I figured out how to use this tool. I think many other human beings can figure out how to use this tool. They might be teachers and they might be students. But what about the students doing more of the creation and the teachers stepping back from that? Audrey, did you want to say something about that?
No, sorry. Are we supposed to be doing a video for you?
I invited you to do it if you want to, but you don't have to. I did want to make sure I walked you through how to kind of get started with it.
But if I would record now, it would pick up your voice because you're speaking, correct? Is that how that works? Do I have it?
Potentially, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try it. And so if you can hear Anthony's voice in the background. Okay.
All right. But I did want to at least introduce this so that you could see it, and encourage you to explore it
Hi,
further.
I'm Audrey.
Okay, so I think Audrey went on off mic, which is good. Okay, let me continue. We have about 10 minutes left. And I still have some things I wanted to talk about, but we're not going to have time. Again, just want to give you an opportunity to think about this tool. So do we hear the student voice, yes or no? And how do we hear it? And then does technology make this activity better, yes or no? And how, in what ways? Okay, we're not going to have time to, I wanted to introduce, well, I wanted to talk about a few more tools here and ideas, but we're going to skip this activity with Canva. But I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with Canva, so it's an infographics tool. I really love Canva, and it's in Canva, you can do all kinds of things. But one of the things that I like about Canva is that it's also a tool that we can use to encourage collaboration, like that group activity in the class. So I'm just going to leave you with that and let you explore Canva on your own. If you have questions about it, just email me after. We can talk more about Canva. We can jump on a Zoom and I can show you more about Canva. I really like Canva a lot. There's a lot of different possibilities with Canva. So, okay. I just wanted to talk about presentation tools in general, right? So I know as teachers, we do a lot of presenting in the class, right? So, PowerPoint and Google Slides, I think at this point, most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with either one of these. But there are other presentation tools that are out there that really have interactivity built into the tool. So as you're presenting, you're also giving students or whomever you're working with, the opportunity to sort of participate in the learning that way. So for example, like sometimes sometimes with our slides, like we just do a slide presentation from start to finish with like slide, blah, 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 right. And then once the slides are done, then we do our activity, right? But what about like more interactivity like along the way, right? So maybe we do a little presentation, we take a pause, we throw up a question, like a poll everywhere question, for example, and then give the students the opportunity to, weigh in. We do sort of comprehension check, but we also invite students to, ask questions or give comments or things like that. So there are some tools that are out there that are really good in this regard. So you might check out like a Mentimeter or Pear Deck or Nearpod. I'm just, I want to encourage you to maybe think about your presentation, like, or your lecturing or whatever you want to call it. But is there a way to kind of make that a more interactive activity? It doesn't have to be a straight presentation. Like we can do interactivity along the way. And there are tools out there that can encourage you to do that. I just want to mention this tool called Book Creator. I've explored Book Creator a little bit, and it's really cool. It's really, as the title suggests, it is a tool that you can use to create books. But these are more like digital books. And I think, any opportunity for students to be creative in what they're sharing, I know that, we always, in ESL, that's my background, we want to learn about the students. Like we want students to introduce their families and where they come from and their adult lives and, what they're working on and things like that. And maybe a tool like Book Creator would be good in that regard. It allows for a lot of creativity. It gives students the opportunity to practice with language and creation and things like that. So this is a tool you might take a look at, Book Creator. Just go to bookcreator.com. You can create a free account. Again, you don't get all the bells and whistles if you have the subscription, but I would encourage you to take a look at this tool. Just some other ideas that I had for, how do students connect with kind of, not only within the classroom, but sort of, expanding beyond the classroom. So just some ideas: blogging, social media. Probably many of our students are on social media. Like, do we look at that as teachers? Like, do we bring any of that kind of social media sharing into our classrooms at all? Are we on social media ourselves? So sharing student stories, we talked about this a little bit with the book creator. I did want to encourage you to visit. This is a site that we manage at OTAN, Adult Education Students Succeed. Student stories are super powerful, and we really need to, well, sorry. I would like to encourage you to really think about how to share those student stories in, not just in the classroom among the students in your classroom, but also sort of outside of the classroom as well, because they're really powerful. It's really powerful stuff. COABE, some of you know this organization, COABE, the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. One of the things that they're looking into and really encouraging more across adult education is students as leaders. So they have some good ideas at this link about how to kind of move along the spectrum, right? From the left to the right, like getting students into more opportunities for leadership. They have a lot of different ideas about how you might do that in your classroom or in your schools. And then you can always, go global, go big, right? Change.org, we.org, Global Nomads Group. These are ways for students to be able to sort of plug into things that are happening beyond the classroom, beyond the school, beyond the community, but how to get involved, in different ways. So lots of ideas about how to students can kind of start to step into some of those leadership roles. And along those lines, I wanted to just kind of mention, this is a research study that I learned about at a conference about a month ago, called the Allies Project. So if you go back to your notes document, and we'll go there in a second, but basically if you go back to the last page of the notes document, there's more information about the Allies Project. And in this project, this was a national project, and so they looked at 12 different student leadership projects across the country. And you can go to that. You can go to the Value USA website to learn more about the research project and get more details about the what the students were up to. But what I wanted to do, maybe we'll go there in a second, but let me go there now because we don't have a lot of time. But on the notes document, let me go to the last page here. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so at the very top of this page, so this is just I copied this right from one of the reports. So they basically kind of outlined what this Allies project was about. And then they actually gave a quick description as to what these different projects were that the students worked on with the adult educators, teachers, staff members at the schools, and also in their communities as well. But I wanted to just give you some ideas, because I know I think one of the questions, or maybe a couple of the questions in the Padlet were, well, how do we start moving the students like from the left-hand side of the spectrum to the right side of the spectrum, right? How do we like create these opportunities for leadership at our adult ed agencies and really kind of encourage that student voice to come out beyond what's going on in the classroom, right? Or beyond what's going on in the program. So I wanted to give you a record here of what the different projects were. And for you to think about, okay, when I look at what the student leadership projects were, like, is there a possibility for some kind of a similar project back at my agency, right? So for example, like just this one here, right? Establish an ongoing can recycling program to raise funds for family literacy books. One of the things that oh my God, for so many years back at my adult ed agency, like they never had the recycling bins out. Like there were no recycling bins anywhere on the campus. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why aren't we recycling at our school? Anyway, but some school figured it out, right? And they figured out, oh, we can actually raise money and then we can use that money for something that we need at the school. So I just want to give you like some ideas, like, are there some possibilities here for what could happen back at your agency, at your school, that could bring more students into participation, leadership opportunities, ... so that we can really, so that we really sort of empower them to share their voices, you know, at the school and in their communities. So take a look at this. At the very bottom of this page is actually a link to the information on the Value USA website, where you can read more about the projects. But to me, really, it's like, okay, well, how do we encourage leadership, you know, among our students at the school, so that we can hear more of their voices as well. And I'm not saying that, you know, it's you by yourself should figure out how to do this. Like, it's going to take a village, right, for these leadership projects. But I do feel like start with the students, right? Invite that, you know, kind of explore the possibilities with them, see what they're interested in, see what they're passionate about. And is there a way to sort of generate it from the students themselves, but to be a facilitator in that regard, along with your other colleagues at the school, to really get some of these ideas up off the ground, right? And encourage more student voice that way. So, all right. So, gosh, I wish we had more time. We're at noon. You're probably starving, ready for lunch. I always ask folks, 3, 2, 1, reflect on 3 things you learned today, 2 things that you'll share with your colleagues, and 1 thing that you'll try. Hopefully you will try something that you learned about today. Marjorie, if you can put the link to the evaluation in the chat, that would be super duper.
It's there.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And just say again, thank you so much for attending. One thing, you know, OTAN, we do, as I said in the beginning, we do training across the state, you know, on a variety of topics. So if you want to talk more about student voice, using technology for student voice, we certainly, I would love to do a longer training. I think I always try to cram as much as I can into 90 minutes. Obviously, it doesn't work all the time, but if we had like 2 hours, 3 hours with your colleagues at your agency, maybe in your consortium, in your region, we can also talk more about this, explore this some more. So certainly reach out to us, support@otan.us. Otherwise, I'm going to stop. If you can fill out the evaluation, that would be super duper great. And I will say thanks for coming. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your rest of day 3. And we'll see you at the next thing.
Thanks, Anthony. Just a reminder, the link is in the chat, and the posting of this recording is going to be dependent upon review of those evaluations. So please make sure to provide feedback there. And Anthony said it is time for lunch. The exhibitor-sponsored session today is being hosted by Essential Education. So check that out. Go to the conference sponsors and exhibitors in the chat section, and we'll see you back for the next sessions that begin at 1 o'clock. So have a great lunch, everyone. Make sure and fill out the evaluation, please.
And see you later.
Take care. Bye, everyone.